One Piece. A wild man can also become a swordsman. Chapter 21. Okay, let's go. When you get downstairs, remember to take me to say hello to Roger. I almost gave my life to help the child be born safely. Wait, Carl, then I'll leave Hiyori to your care. I'm not a good father. Yeah. Carl responded and left. The 3 days were up, and Kazuki Oden and the 9 red scabbards were driven to the boiling oil pan. At this time, Kazuki Oden made a bet with Kaido to protect his retainers. If he could hold on for an hour under the 700-degree oil temperature, he would let those people go. The 9 red scabbards felt that they could not let Kazuki Oden spend this hour so easily, so they all wanted to jump into the oil pan and take an oil bath with Kazuki Oden. Oden had no choice but to lift a wooden board for his retainers to stand on and watch Oden being thrown into the oil pan. So far, Kazuki Oden, dead. That night, the beast's pirates surrounded Kazuki Oden's home in Kuri. A fire burned the yard. Kazuki Toki had already read the letter left by Kazuki Oden, and activated the ability of the Superman Time Fruit to send Kinman, Raizo, and the great traitor Kurozumi Kanjuro and Momonosuke back to 20 years later on the time train. Kazuki Toki and Hiyori were left alone in the Sea of Fire. Just then, the fishman Hisong arrived here. Kazuki Toki handed Hiyori to Hisong. Hisong took Hiyori away by water. After Kazuki Toki left the last words, the bright moon does not know, if this wish is fulfilled, after 20 years of moonlit night, 9 shadows will fall from the sky, and you will see the dazzling dawn. He was also shot to death by the beast's pirates. Thus ended the country of Wano. On the other side, Carl was already waiting for Hiyori and Hisong by the river. Because Oden had given advance instructions, Hisong followed Carl to leave Wano country on the pretext of taking care of Hiyori. Carl transformed into a dragon and took the two away from here. After walking and stopping along the way, they finally returned to the island of Jiji where Carl lived before a week later. His residence was already a spider web. There was dust everywhere, and it was obvious that no one had lived there for a long time. The 3 of them cleaned for half a day before they could move in. Carl had built this wooden house very large when he built it before. Although he was only one person, he built 4 rooms according to his own preferences. The 3 of them went to sleep after dinner. Hiyori finally reacted after a few days of rushing on the road, and covered her head with a quilt and cried silently in the quilt. The next day, after almost 3 years, he went back to his pirate hunter journey again. He found that the small wooden boat he built a long time ago had rotted, and Carl had already come up with the idea of building his own pirate ship. If it was a few days ago, he didn't know when he would have his own ship. But after 2 years of Kaido's teaching, and with the Supreme Sword 12 works ace that Roger gave to Carl, which has his own domineering color and swordsmanship in it, Carl can't fight any admiral now. But it's more than enough to fight a brigadier general. With strength, of course, it's better to rob other people's property. Before, he had no ability to contact some high-bounty enemies, but now it's not necessarily the case. In the morning, Carl didn't even need a boat, but spread his wings and flew to the sea to look for pirates who had just come from the 4 seas. In the year 1506 of the Kayan calendar, Carl has continuously captured those bounty pirates in the past 4 years. In 2004, he was invited by the world government to become a 7 warlords of the sea, but Carl refused. After Gecko Moria was defeated by Kaido, the world government also wanted to go to Moria, but this kid didn't live up to expectations. Since he fought with Kaido and killed all his crew members, he has been immersed in self-fantasy. The original intention of joining the Shichibukai was for the world government to find a group of black gloves to do the work and defeat pirates with pirates. Who knew that he would be a slacker after joining the Shichibukai? He would occasionally accept the missions, and sometimes he would just disappear. This really pissed off the 5 old men. Now that another talented and capable person has appeared on the sea, it is natural to invite Carl, but he was rejected by Carl. Is this acceptable? The CPO sent by the world government fought Carl on the sea for 3 days and ended in failure. Carl's first bounty was also officially announced. A very evil person. Mr. Carl. Reward: 235 million berries. Life or death. Personal information of Mesut Carl. Born in 1490, he had been on the ship of Pirate King Roger when he was 6 years old. After the disbandment of Roger's pirate group, he lived on an island near the intersection of the first half of the Grand Line, and killed pirates with bounties as a pirate hunter. He disappeared for a few years after the death of Pirate King Roger, and reappeared in the public eye in January 1503, and his strength increased greatly. This news made some pirates who had just come out of the Four Seas and had no stable income crazy. After all, how powerful can a 14-year-old kid be? In this way, wave after wave of pirates specifically inquired about Carl's location and gave Carl gold coins every day. In 2005, Carl saved enough money to build a ship, so he ran to the Seven Waters City and asked Tom the Fishman to help build a ship. After a year of waiting, the ship was finally built. In fact, the main reason for the time is that Carl's requirements for raw materials are too high, and he himself has no, so he can only wait for someone to take out the raw materials to sell. After waiting for a year, the ship was finally built in 1506 of the Haiyuan calendar. This ship cost Carl most of his savings over the years. Now the ship is ready to set sail. Brother Carl, this ship hasn't been named yet. Just as Carl was about to leave, Tom stopped Carl. Sorry, I was a little excited about my first ship and almost forgot. Rihei, Hisong, you two should think about it together. Naming is too difficult. Carl is a bad namer. If he is asked to fight, he can do it. If he doesn't come up with an invincible Tyrannosaurus Rex, he will be very grateful. There are several people, a little girl, and one of them was a gangster. How could they think of it? In the end, Carl had to name it himself. Let me think about it. Let me think about it. Carl was scratching his head. By the way, it's called Black King. This name is similar to the name of my fruit. Okay, the crew is ready, the Black King is officially setting sail. By the way, Mr. Tom, weren't you held accountable by the world government for building a ship for Uncle Roger? I don't have anything to give you for helping me build a ship this time, but I think I can give you the idea at that time. Then Carl took a kettle directly, lit a flame in his hand, and boiled the water directly after a few minutes. Carl blocked the spout of the kettle with his fingers, and the lid of the kettle began to be lifted by the steam. This is something I came up with by accident while watching others do it. Although I know the principle, I am not a talent in this area, so I have not accumulated any time to study it. I hope this information can help you, Mr. Tom. After saying that, Carl followed Hiyori and Kasong to open the boat and leave the Seven Water City. After leaving the Seven Waters City, Carl asked Hisong to drive directly to the White Sea where the Sky Island legend was. Carl had been there before, so he quickly confirmed the direction. In the past few years, Carl was responsible for the jungle. Hiyori and Hisong learned navigation knowledge and sailing respectively. After arriving at the White Sea, Carl asked them to wait for him at a nearby island. He spread his wings and flew into the sky alone. Sky Island is 10,000 meters above the White Sea, that is, 7,000 meters above the White Sea, and 10,000 meters above the White Sea. Because the oxygen in Sky Island is thin, most Qinghai people will have reduced athletic ability after coming to Sky Island due to the thin oxygen. But this has no effect on Carl. He is not only one of the few people who are not affected. The most important thing is that Carl's ancestors originally lived in the Holy Land of Marihoa at an altitude of 10,000 meters, and his race is famous for its strong survival ability. No matter how harsh the environment is, he can survive. If the two small Sky Islands are stumped, he will be embarrassed to say that he is also a Lunaria tribe like Jin. It is really too embarrassing. One of the reasons why he didn't bring Kawamatsu and Hiyori with him this time was that it was too troublesome to go up and down the Sky Island, and he went to the Sky Island for one person. Enel. That's right. When he was with Roger's pirate group before, he went to meet this unique guy on the Sky Island under the pretext of taking a walk. When Carl found him, he saw him being beaten up by people. Carl helped him by the way, and then told him that the thunder fruit might be on the Sky Island, and invited him to join Carl's ship in a few years. This is a devil fruit ranked in the top 5 among the natural devil fruits. The reason why it was defeated later was mainly due to the restraint and the protagonist's halo. In addition, there was a lack of information on the Sky Island itself, and it was already quite amazing that he could combine the power of the devil fruit with his own observation haki to create a heart net. Carl dispersed his observation haki as soon as he arrived on the Sky Island, and he was always looking for Enel. Enel was quite hostile to the people of the Sky Island. Enel couldn't confirm whether he was from Qinghai, but he knew that he had been bullied by the people of Sky Island. The place where Carl met Enel before, Bika, had disappeared when he saw it again after many years. Yes, it disappeared. Carl guessed that it should be Enel based on his clues, and most of the devil fruits choose their owners by themselves, so Enel should have found the thunder fruit after Carl left. Now it's very painful to not be able to find Enel. It's a headache for Carl to find him on such a big Sky Island. He must have hidden himself after destroying Bika because he can't beat Gonful. At this time, Carl suddenly had an idea. If he couldn't find Enel, he could let Enel come to him. As for that fool, it's not that he can't beat him. It's not a problem to beat him with one hand. Thinking of this, Carl directly released the Conqueror's Haki that he hadn't used to fight for a long time. He had only released it during training for a long time before. In order to maximize the effect of the Conqueror's Haki, Carl also pulled out the 7-star sword tied to his waist. Before, because he was young and had not grown up, he had always carried the 7-star sword on his back. Now Carl is nearly 3 meters tall, with silver white hair, brown skin, and a slightly childish and handsome face full of confidence. The 7-star sword was half drawn, and the Conqueror's Haki attached to the sword, and suddenly an evil aura spread. The Conqueror's Haki rushed straight into the sky, spreading to a radius of 5 kilometers with Carl as the center, accompanied by lightning and flames as if something was burning. In just a few minutes, 2 groups of black people appeared on the horizon and flew towards Carl. Carl saw the people on one side, led by Enel, who had not been seen for a long time, followed by 4 people. On the other side was Furl, who claimed to be the god of Sky Island, whom Carl had met a few years ago. Hey, Enelu here. Carl called Enelu when they were almost there. Enelu had been practicing according to Carl's method since he ate the thunder fruit, and he had made some progress. However, it might be because the air of Sky Island itself was thin, so it was particularly difficult to practice. So now he had initially awakened his observation haki. Just now when he was practicing, he felt a strong breath in the direction of his hometown Bika, so he brought 4 of his men who had served him a year ago to check it out. For on the other side, he thought someone had come to Sky Island, and he was afraid that it would endanger his status as a god, so he rushed over. When the 2 groups met, they were on edge. The whole Sky Island knew that Enelu had destroyed his hometown Bika before. Enelu, you, a sinful person, dare to appear before this god. Are you tired of living? Ha 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 ha, isn't this our Sky Island god gone foul? Let's try and find out if he is tired of living. Carl didn't care about their trash talk, he just used shave to get behind Fowl and kicked him away. Okay, Enel, it's almost done. I've built the boat this time. You can get on board now. Well, since you said so, I will reluctantly serve as a mate on your ship. By the way, Captain, where is your ship? Oh, I didn't come up because I thought it was troublesome. Stop talking nonsense, come up quickly, are these your men? Did they want to follow you? Carl couldn't stand his trash talk, so he slapped him on the back of his head, and then transformed into a dragon. A 50-meter-long dragon suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and Furl's men who had wanted to make a move were directly frightened. At this time, the 4 great priests were too old to be able to move. The reason is that they are still very weak, and it seems that they are all about the same age as Carl. The oldest should be Shura, holding a spear taller than himself. The second is Gadas, the third Ohm is a swordsman, and the fourth is Shadley, who is chubby and looks like a ball. Of course they want to come with me. I don't want to be alone on your ship. In the past few years, after eating the thunder fruit, Enel has experienced the power of strength. Not only did he avenge the death of Bika, but he also took in these 4 talented servants. He was very happy to have apples every day. If he was to suffer on Carl's ship now, he would never do it. Well, if you want to follow me, come on up. After the 5 people got on Carl's back, Carl jumped directly and rushed down from a height of 10,000 meters. Because of the thunder fruit, Enel had no feeling for this height. At this time, he was still standing on Carl's dragon back, with his hands behind his back and a golden stick stuck in his back, showing his master style. However, the 4 people around him were scared. Although the people of Sky Island also have wings, they have never flown before, and it was their first time leaving Sky Island. This shattered the four people's cognition. Half an hour later, Carl brought Enelu and the other five to the Black King. Hiyori and Kawamatsu were a little surprised to see Carl bringing 5 people over in such a short time, although the other 4 looked like children. Hiyori, Kawamatsu, this is Enel. I met him when I was with Roger on Sky Island. The people behind him are his servants. From now on, some chores on the ship will be left to these 4 people. Don't you think so, Enel? Carl held Enel's shoulders and winked at him. After all, he was Enel's direct subordinate. As a captain, no matter how cruel he was, he had to consider the feelings of his subordinates. Enel didn't have any objections. The main reason was that he subconsciously believed that it was Carl who made him encounter the Thunder Fruit, which gave him unparalleled power. So in his heart, Carl's position was obviously much more important than these subordinates. Okay, now that our crew has been formed, let's officially give us a better name for the team. Everyone, think about what pirates group would be better. I thought about it carefully before, and I think it would be better to call it the Crown Pirates. Then let's do as you say. Anyway, it's up to us. Hey, why don't you all seem interested? Forget it, since you all have no objection, let's call it the Crown Pirates. Seconded. Agree. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Since we are called the Crown Pirates, the pirate flag should be a skull with a crown on it, and my 7-star sword should be inserted behind the skull. Hiyori, you are the best painter among us, so this important task is given to you. As you command, Captain. Hiyori immediately took out a piece of black cloth that had been prepared long ago, wrote and drew on it, and soon the picture was drawn. In this group of people, except for Hiyori, they were all rough men, let alone drawing, and few of them could hold a pen. Carl took the pirate flag from Hiyori's hand and handed it to Kawamatsu. Okay, Kawamatsu, put up the pirate flag. Hisam, take Enel's 4 men to familiarize yourself with the situation on the ship. From now on, the mission of guarding the Black King will be handed over to these 4 people. Get ready, we are going to the East Sea now, and recruit enough companions to board the ship as soon as possible. Carl's next target in the East Sea this time is Chloro from the Black Cat Pirates. In fact, he is not very sure. After all, he has not had much contact with the East Sea before. By the way, Buggy and Shanks were in the East China Sea last time. I don't know if Shanks has left. If Shanks is not here, you can ask Buggy to check. He should be able to find out. That guy should be almost 20 years old now. I wonder if he has gone out to sea during this period. If he has, it will be much easier to find him. Carl was talking to himself while standing on the deck at the bow. He was thinking about how to make the pirate group he formed develop quickly. As for relying on personality charm to attract crew members, he believed that he could do so, but he didn't know who he could attract. Besides, he was not the same as Red Hair. The pirate groups formed by Shanks and Luffy later were not worthy of being called pirate groups. They should be called tour groups. The first purpose of his forming a pirate group was to compete with the strong from all over the world, and the second was to plunder. If he didn't want to enjoy the power after having it, would he save the world? Don't be ridiculous. Carl has done his best by not bullying the weak. I hope I can find the right person to board the ship this time in the East China Sea. Then he turned around and saw Enelu behind him, as if waiting for something. Oh, look at my memory, I almost forgot. He returned to the room, took out a book made of sheepskin and threw it to Enel. Here, this is what I promised to give you. I suspected that your strength improvement was very slow because you were on the Sky Island. You should first get familiar with the environment of Qinghai during this period of time and then start practicing in a few days. This is a training manual that Carl has researched based on his own situation. It contains 3 training methods: swordsmanship, physical training, and domineering. And Carl also has some insights based on his understanding of the Conqueror's Haki. He believes that the Conqueror's Haki is indeed possessed by a small number of people, but it is not scarce. He believes that the Conqueror's Haki should be a kind of self-awakening, and it can only be achieved when the mind is clear. Some people will awaken after they have reached the end of their practice and have the heart to be king, and some people may not awaken even if they have the heart to be king. This thing depends on fate, and the most important thing is blood. Ancestors have awakened the conqueror's haki, or people with strong blood will have a relatively higher chance of possessing the conqueror's haki. Note that it is possession rather than awakening. For example, Carl and Jin, Kaido and Yamato. Carl and Jin's conqueror's haki can be awakened mostly because of their blood, and Kaido and Yamato are similar. Of course, this also requires a strong heart or a heart to be king. Carl's awakening of Enel's heart to be king is not low. Although the opponent mostly relies on the ability of the fruit when fighting, there is still a chance to awaken the conqueror's haki, but it depends on the face. I think your physical skills are too poor. First, take a look at the physical training above. As for swordsmanship, it's up to you, but I still suggest you take a look at it. As for stick techniques, I can't teach you because I don't know how to use them, but I know there should be some places that have stick techniques and other force techniques. Go to the East China Sea to find someone first, and then I'll take you there after a while. Then there is your observation haki. After you ate the thunder fruit, you have mastered the observation haki. During this period, I will personally teach you how to practice haki. Compared to observation haki, armament haki is the most difficult to practice. Armament haki must be practiced with a foundation of physical skills. Otherwise, it will be useless. A few days later, Carl's ship arrived at Upside Down Mountain, which was surrounded by a group of pirate hunters. A group of people saw a pirate ship they had never seen before. The ship was very big, and they had never seen a pirate flag before. Carl had spent most of his savings to give nearly 3 billion berries to the fishman Tom and a group of shipbuilders in the Seven Water City to build his giant ship, the Black King. The hull is 150 meters long, 70 meters high, and 65 meters wide. In order to build this ship, Carl's savings of many years were almost drained. Before, those pirate hunters were a little afraid of which supernova it was, but now they are ready to fight when they see a pirate group that they can't even find out. Carl was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. A group of people who didn't know how to live or die dared to covet his things. Get out of here. He walked to the deck at the bow, put his hand on the hilt of the seven-star sword at his waist, and pulled out half of the sword with his domineering aura attached to the sword. The sword seemed to release countless flying slashes invisibly, scaring the pirate hunters to retreat one after another. It's him. How come he formed a pirate group on his own? Who is he? Mr. Carl, you don't even know him. Are you a pirate hunter? He is one of the best pirate hunters in the Grand Line in recent years. He started to harvest pirates in this generation when he was about 10 years old. Later, he disappeared for a few years. He came back stronger. The world government wanted to invite him to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea, but he refused and was hunted down. I didn't expect that he would form his own pirate group. I'll tell you a secret. It is said that he was once a crew member of Pirate King Roger. I wonder if he knows the location of One Piece, Quote. So powerful. I heard that the people who came down from the Pirate King Roger are not simple. A while ago, a person who also came down from the Pirate King's ship actually competed with Dracol Mahawk, who is already one of the 7 warlords of the sea, in swordsmanship, and there was no winner. This is the 7 warlords of the sea. Even if he is not as good as the 3 emperors, he is at the level of the first floor. I don't know how this guy named Carl is. It happened that Mahawk was also nearby today. Quote. I wonder if we should tell Mahawk, maybe he will take us in as his subordinates if he's happy. By then, with the support of the world government, it will be hard not to enjoy the good life. Okay, let's do it this way. Let's go right now, before others get there first. With that, the 2 men sneaked away behind the crowd. Although Carl's observation haki is not as abnormal as Shank's, he can still hear the slightest movement. Whoever mutters something while planning to do something bad is really brainless. The 7-star sword was sheathed. Carl crossed his arms, stood on the deck, closed his eyes and waited quietly. Carl also thought that maybe his swordsmanship was not as good as Hawkeye's, but he was not afraid to the point of being afraid, and why should he run? He was going to fight this time. In the past, he was young and valued his life more, so he retreated tactically. Now this body has entered the age of 16, even if he is still a long way from adulthood. But there is no need to shrink back when seeing a strong man, otherwise he will not be able to go to the new world in the future. When the ship came to the rapids, it went straight upstream. The sea water seemed to be pouring back and pushed the Black King to the upper reaches of the waterfall. The Black King rushed up at once, and when it reached the top, the helmsman he song steered to the right. On the right is the entrance to the East China Sea. There are 5 waterways in Upside Down Mountain, with 2 entrances directly in front. The front right is the entrance to the North Sea, the front left is the entrance to the West Sea, the far right is the entrance to the East China Sea, and the far left is the entrance to the South China Sea. The Black King entered the East China Sea smoothly. Sprinted down along the rapids. Then it landed steadily on the sea. Hi, check what islands are nearby, especially those with a large population, preferably those with information selling channels. Okay, Captain. Kawamatsu was directing Enel's Sky Island Quartet. At this moment, Carl felt a strong breath approaching him. He jumped onto the bow and saw that the man had a long knife on his back, and the handle was inlaid with 8 spherical gems. At this time, the man was sitting on a small boat that looked like a coffin, wearing a cloak and a hat. He lowered his head and sat on the boat with his legs crossed, his hands clasped on his knees. Carl looked at the man's attire and knew that it must be Mahawk Hawkeye. No one else could ride on such a funny boat and pretend like this. I just don't know if his boat relies on his big knife as a paddle. When he was alone, he would sit on the boat with his legs crossed. When no one was around, he would take out the Supreme Sword 12 Works Black Blade Knight from behind and use it as a paddle to row the boat. Thinking of this, Carl couldn't stop smiling. Mahawk found it strange that this man had no sense of crisis and was still smiling. Regardless of anything else, he drew out the Black Blade Knight from behind and slashed with a flying blow. The blade cut through the air and flew towards the Black King with a green aura. Carl was not to be outdone. He drew out the 7-star sword from his waist and swung out a flying blow as well. Carl's flying blow soon met the attack swung by Mahawk. The two energies competed with each other in the air and finally both dissipated. You must be Master Carl. Shanks mentioned you to me a few days ago. You are indeed very strong. Oh ha, you're not bad either. I didn't expect Shanks would give me such a high evaluation. This is not the place to fight. Let's go to an island ahead and have a good fight. Okay. After saying that, the guy didn't hesitate and jumped directly onto Carl's Black King. How did your boat sail on the sea without sails or oars? You didn't use the big knife on your back to row it, did you? After Mahawk got on the boat, Carl looked at him and asked with a bit of a bad taste. Mahawk didn't answer, but just looked ahead with an expressionless face, as if Carl was not asking him. Forget it. I'll ask Shanks when I meet him. I'm sure I can get some interesting information from him. After a while, the Black King docked on an uninhabited island. Mahawk jumped off the ship without waiting for Carl. Carl followed closely behind. You don't have to come down to join in the fun, just watch from the side. Carl gave the order to the crew members and then caught up with Mahawk. The two men stopped at the same time when they arrived at the center of the island. The next moment, they both drew their weapons and quickly slid towards each other. The two weapons collided with each other, causing dust to fly around them. Then, waves of air emanated from the collision point on both sides, which shattered the surrounding rocks and soil to the side. The two men remained in a stalemate for 5 minutes, then separated. Then they collided again, and this time, the two weapons did not block each other like before. This time, the two men competed in the basic moves of swordsmanship. This is also the step for swordsmen to compete in swordsmanship. The island was filled with flying slashes. Carl's swordsmanship was slightly inferior, but Carl's physical strength was better than Mahawk's. After half a day, Mahawk was already out of breath, while Carl was still like nothing happened. The competition of swordsmanship is not just a simple fight, and the two have not used any abilities other than swordsmanship until now. If it is a pure swordsmanship competition, Carl can be on par with Mahawk because of his better physical strength, and although Mahawk's swordsmanship is slightly better than Carl's, he cannot defeat Carl in an instant. Let's decide the outcome with one move. My swordsmanship is indeed inferior to yours. Okay, the other party replied. Carl immediately launched a sword that he had learned many years ago. Royal Extreme. Mahawk also swung his sword, and the two attacks collided with each other, illuminating the entire island. Afterwards, the mountaintops on the island were flattened by the slashes one after another. A ball of energy spread out from the center of the island to the side. During this time, it also flashed a dazzling light. After a burst of white light, they stood opposite each other. The rocks around the two people were scattered during the fight just now. Now the place where the two people stood was a huge pit. The rocks under the feet of both sides did not collapse, just like two people standing on a hill and looking at each other from a distance. Mahawk on the other side was already panting, and the sweat on his head fell like raindrops. The black knife in his hand, knight, was inserted into the ground, and Mahawk held the hilt with his right hand. When the two people fought, they relied on simple sword skills to compete, so at this time, personal physical fitness and physical strength were particularly prominent. Carl himself was a special race, and he had eaten the devil fruit and had been training with Roger and Rayleigh since he was a child. Although he did not use his Lunaria family's wings and the flames in his body to fight against the devil fruit's physical enhancement during the competition, he also suppressed Hawkeye casually, but he could not win, and could only keep consuming his physical strength. If he used the abilities of the Lunaria clan excluding the devil fruit, his swordsmanship would be even more terrifying. At that time, he would not be able to easily defeat Mahawk, but he could still suppress him. As for winning or losing, it is not so easy. In One Piece, a fight takes 2 or 3 days for an average person. A fight lasts for a week for a Marine Admiral or above. It is not easy to easily defeat a person with the same strength as yourself. In addition, in the process of fighting, some people can just stimulate their potential and explode directly. Therefore, those with top strength will keep a hand in the battle and not force the opponent into a dead end. For example, why most of the Navy under the world government captures pirates instead of killing them directly. Fear of explosion is one reason, and another reason is that most of the pirates who can be captured by the Navy in person have the ability of devil fruit. Even if they are killed, it is useless. As long as the fruits of these dead people are not mastered by the Navy, the second, third, and fourth will appear. It is more convenient to capture them and lock them up in Impel Down than to kill them all the time. Except for the guy named Golden Lion a few years ago, he is the only one who escaped from Impel Down in hundreds of years. Hey, Mahawk, are you still okay? Do you want to continue fighting? You probably haven't used your full strength. If it's just the current state, I think my swordsmanship will not lose to you. Shanks once told me that you are a strange guy, a weirdo who seems to not exist in this world. You can easily do things that others can't do, just like my eyes, which can easily see through the essence of others. Ha 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 ha, that's right, but if you want me to show a suitable fighting posture, your current strength is not enough. Carl looked at Mahawk with interest. He had long known that Mahawk's nickname Hawkeye came from his eyes. When fighting with others or watching others fight, this pair of eyes is like a high-speed computer that can analyze other people's physical data. Just now, when Carl was fighting, every time he landed, it was like the way flying species landed. Mahawk watched for a long time before confirming that this guy either had the ability of a fruit or was some unknown special race, otherwise his fighting style would never be so strange. The main reason was that Carl swung his sword very quickly every time. When Mahawk fought with him, it was like a gust of wind whistling in front of his eyes. It is normal for ordinary people to swing their swords with wind when competing in swordsmanship, but Carl is abnormal in that when he swings his sword, not only does his attack method carry wind, but his slash is also a large slash composed of countless small slashes. This is a very common slash by sword masters. While swinging his sword, Carl will follow the airflow like a gust of wind and add his own strength to quickly overlap with the previous slash, and then swing another sword in the previous slash. This is simply a existence for some sword masters who like to use flying slashes to consume the opponent's physical strength. Originally, the flying slash itself is equivalent to a long-range attack. Now a person swings a long-range attack and then quickly runs over to overlap with the slash, and then fights you in close combat. The most important thing is your physical fitness. My character is not as good as others, and my physical strength is not as good as others, which is very shameful. My fighting style is strange, my physical skills are powerful, my physical fitness is strong, and my physical endurance is excellent. I am either a devil fruit user or a special race. Carl stood there waiting for Mahawk's answer. He knew this arrogant man, how could he admit defeat easily? After catching his breath for more than 10 minutes, Mahak pulled out the black knife that was stuck in the ground again. Then he activated the three colors of domineering. The armament color wrapped around the handle of the knife, and then spread to the whole body of the knife. Mahak's red-gold pupils began to shine as if they had found the light, and the purple domineering color spread into the sky, gathering the dark clouds within a radius of dozens of miles. The observation color surrounded him like smoke around him. Seeing this situation, Carl knew that this was the real contest. Carl directly showed the wings that had been hidden in the bones on his back. The black wings spread out. Unlike the wings of the Sky Island people, Carl's wings can not only fly but are also wider and stronger than the wings of the Sky Island people. At the same time, a raging fire ignited on his head, and then a crown appeared. He slowly raised his right hand holding the seven-star sword, pointing the tip of the sword at Mahak, and the three colors of domineering rushed out of Carl's body like a dam that had been opened. The domineering color seemed to be made up of countless dry bones, entwined on the seven-star sword. The originally gorgeous sword body seemed to be coated with a layer of light, and the sword body was dazzling. The armament color also wrapped around the sword body at the same time, and the observation color was like the red snake rushed towards Mahak. Mahak looked at the sight rushing towards him and sensed something unusual. It's really interesting. Mahak muttered to himself. He raised the black knife and glided towards Carl at low altitude. Carl fluttered his wings and floated in the air, and then rushed towards Mahak. The moment their weapons were about to touch, a red ball was generated. The red ball was like a leakage, with arcs spreading around it and making a hissing sound. After a while, they separated tacitly. After separating, Carl's pupils flashed red, and his originally red pupils were like a mad beast. He plunged into Mahak's direction again. Royal Extreme swung out a sword, and before Mahak could react, he activated Shave to dodge behind him and slashed with a sword. The attack in front of Mahak also fell right in front of him. Without time to think, he realized that Carl had come behind him and swung a sword again, but it was too late to dodge. Mahak directly took two attacks. Mahak gritted his teeth and took on two attacks. Carl then used his flying combat skills again, breaking through Mahak's defenses back and forth, real and fake, fake and real. Suddenly, Mahak's body was covered with scars. Carl used Shave again to flash behind Mahak and swung his sword. At this time, Carl's previous attack had not been offset yet. If he wanted to block the attack behind him, it would be uncomfortable to be hit by the sword energy in front of him. But who is Mahak? He is a proud swordsman. The shame of a swordsman is to leave scars on his back. So he directly gave up the previous slash that had not been offset, and used a sword to block the attack from behind. Ding! Finally, after Carl exerted all his strength, Mahak finally touched his weapon again. You have to know that Carl's every attack was wrapped with the initial domineering color. If you want to make contact between the two weapons, it depends on the domineering contest between the two sides. Obviously, Mahak's Conqueror Haki is not as strong as Carl's. If it is armament Haki, he thinks that Carl is not as good as him, but Conqueror Haki and Observation Haki are not the same. From the moment Carl's Observation Haki was activated, Hawkeye thought it was the same Observation Haki as Red Hair. It directly blocked the opponent's Observation Haki, so you can't feel your own Observation Haki. Carl's Observation Haki was activated in the same way as Shank's just now, but Mahak can still feel the existence of his own Observation Haki at the beginning. At first, he thought it was just imitating Red Hair's Observation Haki. After continuous fighting, he began to find that the other party was not blocking his Observation Haki, but was constantly testing his Observation Haki and causing a wrong prediction of his Observation Haki. Because of the wrong prediction, Mahak has been at a disadvantage until he was almost left with the shame of a swordsman. Moreover, he found that since the opponent stretched out his black wings and the burning crown on his head, not only has the speed increased, but also the power combat skills, defense and reaction are more powerful than before. It was like two people of the same level were fighting, and the other person suddenly got a level up, crushing him in all aspects except for the armament Haki. It was very embarrassing, but Mahak became more and more excited as he fought. Even with Shanks, he had never been so happy before. At this time, the opposite Carl was like a whetstone for Mahak. Mahak needed this whetstone, and he instantly felt that Shanks was not so good. The opposite Carl was the real monster, and he was a character who could make him use all his strength. Shanks had originally stirred his silent heart, and now Carl directly stimulated his bloodiness. Mihawk made fewer and fewer mistakes, and Carl, who had the upper hand, was gradually caught up by him. But Carl was also using him as a whetstone. Seeing that he gradually found his state and was serious, Carl did not indulge him. You are the one who will be excited, and Carl's eyes were flashing red as if he was filled with blood. He slashed with a sword. Gusts of wind blew around him, rushing towards Mihawk. Mihawk showed a long-lost smile, and swung a knife. The two blades hit each other with a roaring sound. The mountain behind the two was shattered, and then the edge of the coast fell into the sea. Strong winds surrounded the two people, and the wind also carried the sword and sword energy. The two different energies tore the clothes of the two people. Carl showed his broad and strong body. With a height of nearly 3 meters and the more than 2-meter-long 7-star sword, he looked like a general on the battlefield. He quickly withdrew the 7-star sword, then held the hilt with both hands, turned around and swung the sword in the direction of Mihawk. When I competed with Mihawk before, I always held the hilt with one hand. It was not to underestimate him, but mainly to see my own limit. Mihawk stared at Carl's movements. Seeing him holding the hilt with both hands and swinging the sword, he thought that even if he was very strong, it would not be outrageous. It was not until the 7-star sword was swung that his eyes widened. Mihawk did not dare to underestimate the enemy and also held the hilt with both hands to take it. When the Black Blade Knight came into contact with the 7-star sword, Mihawk realized how foolish his contempt was. Just now, the other party deliberately cancelled his observation haki, but he did not even realize the power of this move, and thought it was only slightly stronger than before. Mihawk held the Black Blade Knight in both hands to block in front of him, and the 7-star sword pushed Mihawk behind him like a bulldozer. He almost plowed out an acre of land before he stopped. Mihawk had just stopped and had no time to rest for a moment when Carl flashed in front of Mihawk. Carl's figure was reflected in Mihawk's golden pupils, and the red pupils were particularly obvious at this moment. Royal Extreme. This time, Mihawk didn't block it like before. He flew backwards, smashed several mountains behind him, and was stopped halfway up the last small peak. His whole body collapsed into the mountain, as if embedded in it. Carl didn't give him a chance to relax. He quickly flapped his wings and activated Shave to come to Mihawk's head and swung a knife. Mihawk was knocked into the ground again before he climbed out of his body. The small peak finally collapsed under the pressure, stirring up thick smoke. Carl stood in the air with his feet and watched Mihawk, who was invisible in the smoke. According to the law of no injury, Mihawk can still be blocked, but don't think it will be easy. When the smoke dissipated, Mihawk walked out of the smoke in a panic. The red windbreaker that had a little cloth left before was now gone. There were still a few scars on his face and body, and even a small tuft of his hair was burned because Carl brought the tyrant flame just now. When Mihawk came out of the smoke, he was no longer as calm as before. If he was out of breath because of exhaustion before, this time he was obviously injured. Seeing that he was still eager to fight, Carl guessed that this guy was active and face-saving. As one of the few people of the same age, how could he admit defeat before the battle was over? Although he knew that it was a matter of time, because he found that Carl did not intend to use all his abilities when fighting him. And after the battle just now, when Carl's shirt was torn into pieces, he saw a black scale tattoo on his right shoulder. When he saw Carl showing his wings, he thought that the other party should be a fruit ability user, and thought that even if he was ripe, he was defeated because of the devil fruit. When he saw the burning crown on his head, plus the black dragon scale tattoo on his right shoulder, he knew that the guy on the opposite side really disdained to use the power of the devil fruit when fighting him. And when he was in the smoke, he felt that Carl's wings and the way they were flames were a bit strange, until he remembered a legendary race. Although the burning flames were a bit strange, this state and the fighting state after the burning flames were obviously more exaggerated than before. Before, it was just because the difference in swordsmanship was not big, but the lack of physical strength could not do anything to him. Now, the gap has widened due to the swordsmanship, and the opponent's all-round attributes have been upgraded. Okay Mihawk, let's stop here. I want to see your strongest attack first, not in your current state. Mihawk looked at Carl, and when their eyes met, Mihawk showed a rare anger. It seemed that Carl's words seemed to have stimulated his heart. Oh, ha 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 ha, it turns out that nothing can be hidden from your eyes. You deserve the name of Eagle Eyes. Then you'd better be ready for my strongest move. Carl said, no longer hiding the power of the fruit in his body. His height, which was originally nearly 3 meters tall, suddenly jumped to more than 9 meters. The dragon scale tattoo on his right shoulder was shining brightly, and a thick black tail with scales appeared from his tailbone. Carl has now activated the first form of the devil fruit, the dragon man form. On his forehead grows a white dragon horn with a spike at the end. His whole body is covered with scales, as if he is wearing armor. His fingers, which were originally flesh and blood, also grow spikes, as if he is wearing a pair of steel gloves. The original momentum climbed again. Roar. Carl opened his mouth and roared, and Mahak on the opposite side was directly hit by the air wave. Only his bright golden pupils were flashing in the smoke and dust. Got it, Mahak. The next moment, he lifted the 2-meter-long 7-star sword and slid low over Mahak. The 7-star sword, which was only 2 meters long, seemed to understand Carl's voice when Carl held it in his hand. The sword body suddenly became longer and bigger. This was the first time Carl accidentally discovered that the 7-star sword liked to absorb the blood of the strong after he got the 7-star sword. After absorbing the blood of these strong men, the 7-star sword's originally dormant consciousness began to wake up. Although it has not yet reached the point where it can communicate with people, it can understand some of Carl's simple instructions. For example, now that Carl has transformed into a dragon man, the 7-star sword has become a weapon that is suitable for Carl according to Carl's appropriate height and body shape. 9 meters Carl, who was already 6 meters long, appeared within 50 meters of Mahak, holding the 7-star sword in his hand. The blade was burning with raging fire. He held the sword with both hands, pointed it at the sky and swung it down heavily. A fire dragon flew towards Mahak. Mahak was staring at Carl's movements on the opposite side. The moment the fire dragon was swung out, Mahak actually had the idea of evading it. However, his pride as a swordsman and his great ideal of becoming the world's #1 swordsman could not let him retreat easily. He knew that as long as he survived this move, he would have a better understanding of the swordsmanship in the future. Since he was not sure that he could take all the damage head-on, he would attack the weakest point to minimize the attack. Ha ha. Mahak roared and gathered all his strength on the Black Knife Knight. In an instant, he swung hundreds of slashes in succession. Hundreds of emerald green slashes gathered into a blue bird facing the red fire dragon. The two attacks seemed to be head-on collisions to decide the winner. After that, the two attacks dissipated in the air. Before he could see what happened behind, a dark black, slightly transparent light shield covered with light appeared where the two attacks landed and spread out from it. Everything that touched on the way was ruthlessly crushed. The light shield directly covered the two people until they disappeared inside. The next moment, Carl on the Black King hummed and went directly to the deck. He was holding a man with only a few pieces of cloth left on his pants. He song, "Did see it clearly just now?" "Look carefully, Captain." The two said in unison. This time, not only can they fight with powerful people, but their swordsmanship may be further improved in the future. As for the two people watching the battle, they are the only swordsmen on the ship besides Carl, so when Carl fought with Mahak, he did not use his full strength at the beginning. On the one hand, it is to verify the extent of his own strength, and on the other hand, it is to give these two people a feeling to see if they can see the doorway. After reaching the level of swordsman, swordsmanship will start to go its own way, and if you want to break through the great swordsman, it is not as simple as mastering swordsmanship. This also requires your own perception, so Carl is giving the two people ideological education. Although he knows how to teach others to practice swordsmanship, if he continues to learn other people's ideas and practice after reaching the level of swordsman, sooner or later he will go wrong. You must know that no matter how good other people's things are, they are still theirs. It is impossible to get the same things as others. At most, you will go astray. Only by mastering other people's things and then creating moves that suit you can you run for a long time. Okay, you two should digest the fight I just had with this guy. And take this guy downstairs to rest. Ha! Prepare the food, I'm a little hungry. This is the first time that Carl has used his dragon form to his full strength since Roger's death. And he has directly expanded his height from nearly 3 meters to more than 9 meters. The increase in size is indeed much stronger, but the consumption is also very high. Using the dragon form to his full strength and adding the buffs such as flame crown, is a bit too much for his body. He hasn't eaten yet, and now he has digested all the food he ate last night, including the fertilizer in his stomach. After recovering his human form and putting away his black wings, Carl went directly to the bathroom to take a shower. After washing up, he changed into a particularly flashy outfit. An emerald green short-sleeved shirt on the upper body, black shorts on the lower body, a pair of flip-flops on the feet, and a pair of sunglasses on the head. With this look, you would think he was traveling. When Carl came back from washing up, the meal was already ready. Previously, the meals were all handled by Hiyori, and they were not particularly delicious. Now they have been handed over to Enel's 4 men. So Hiyori is now responsible for checking the route and warning of dangers and the direction of the ship at any time. Carl sat down at the dining table and ate heartily. He soon put the table. All the food on the table was eaten up, and the 4 people from Sky Island put the food on the table again without waiting for Carl to say anything. Carl buried his head in eating, and in a short time, the plates of food piled up like a mountain. Carl was already round after eating, and sat on the chair like a balloon. The chair was a little overwhelmed and made a creaking sound. Burp. After a burp, Carl rolled off the chair, turned around and came to the deck, sat down on the rattan chair on the deck, and then fell asleep. Not long after lying down, Carl, who was still like a ball, seemed to be deflated. This is the pseudo-life return that Carl developed based on the original text. Although it cannot be 100% similar to the original state, it is still quite powerful. After activating it, you can move your body organs and tissues. Then his pseudo-life return also has another effect, which is that just like Luffy, as long as you eat something, you will quickly recover your physical strength, but there is a problem, that is, after eating something, it is not activated actively, but passively. In addition, he is very sleepy and will easily fall asleep after or before activating it. The next morning, Mihawk woke up in a daze. He found himself lying in an unfamiliar room. He covered his head and only remembered the time before he fainted. He remembered that he had a duel with Carl, and Carl used his strongest state. They both took out their special moves, and their moves collided with each other, and then a light appeared and he was swallowed up in it. Then he woke up. At this time, he looked at his changed clothes. Of course, these were changed by the Sky Island 4. A simple white shirt and a pair of black suit pants. The injuries on his body when he fought with Carl before were almost healed. Hawkeye was able to recover so quickly partly because the body recovered very quickly in the pirate world, and partly because Carl did not release murderous intent when fighting him, so the damage he caused was only superficial injuries. If the biggest damage was, it would be better to say that it was a mental blow. After all, a proud person would never easily accept the fact that he failed. Even Carl himself could not say that he didn't care about this kind of thing. Everyone in this world wants to improve. If you don't even want to improve, you might as well go to Africa and keep company with those niggas like in your previous life. In Africa, everyone just wants to sleep after eating, without worrying about starving to death. Some people even laughed at those who worked hard and said it would be better to lie down. At this time, most of the scabs on Mihawk's body had already formed. Just then, his stomach gave a hungry sound, and he opened the door and found a corridor. He walked out of the cabin along the corridor and came to the deck. At this time, Carl was having breakfast. The restaurant of the Black King was originally built inside the cabin, connected to the cabin rooms, but Carl felt that it was too boring to eat inside, so sometimes he would put the dining table on the deck. Hey, you're awake. Come have some breakfast. Seeing the person coming, Carl called out directly. Mihawk didn't refuse after all, he was really hungry, so he went to sit down at the dining table. When the 4 people from Sky Island saw Mihawk sitting down, they came forward and set the tableware. On the table in front of the 2 of them was a huge roasted sea king. Seeing him sit down, Carl started eating directly. He picked up the table knife and swung it, cutting the sea king in half, and then into countless small pieces. He used the fork in his hand to skewer the fish meat into a string, and ate it all in one gulp. The method was rough and elegant, and Mahak on the opposite side was not to be outdone. The two people instantly lost their elegance just now, and now they felt like two hungry wolves eating. Hiccup. In a moment, the huge sea king in front of them was eaten up, leaving only a huge skeleton on the table. The two people leaned back in the chair. Hey, Mahak, you said you saw Shanks a few days ago and had a fight with him, is that true? Which direction did he go? I don't remember. I shouldn't have asked him. Carl complained in his heart. This guy always likes to pretend to be a cool male god. Carl just ignored him and went to find Hiyori. He and Mahak fought on the island for about 2 or 3 days, and sank more than half of the island, leaving only the towering peaks. Where is Hiyori now? Kalsama, ready to go to Rogue Town. Rogue Town. Well, let's go check it out. We don't have much food left on the boat. Half a day later, the ship docked at the port of Rogue Town. As soon as it docked, a dense crowd of Navy troops appeared around it. Oops, I almost forgot there is a Navy stationed here. This is really troublesome. I can't kill them all. If I kill them all, Garp will come back to surround me, and I can't beat him. Then he turned and looked at Mahak Hakai. Didn't this guy join the Shichibukai formed with the world government? The Navy will definitely not make things difficult for him. Besides, this guy ate and drank on his ship, and he fainted from exhaustion at the last critical moment during the competition a few days ago. If Carl hadn't rescued him, he would be floating somewhere now. Mahak felt Carl's gaze and stood up directly. The leading navy was a little shocked when he saw Mahak. After all, this is the Shichibukai, but in essence, he is a pirate. Naturally, some people in the navy are disgusted, but most of them don't care. After all, they themselves found out after becoming the navy that the navy is indeed just, but not absolutely just. This is how the world is. Where there is black, there will be white, not to mention the gray between black and white. And their navy is light gray. On the one hand, some people maintain absolute justice, on the other hand, some people are peaceful justice, and there is also a hypocritical justice. I am Jorakal Mahak, one of the 7 warlords of the world government. Make way for me. After hearing these words, the leader was confused at first, and then he ordered the soldiers to disperse. Because Carl's pirate ship was just established, it is not well known yet. Although his ship is very large, no one would doubt it if Mahak was on board. Enelu stayed behind to watch the ship while the others went to purchase supplies. Ah, okay, remember to buy me a few boxes of apples. Enel originally wanted to get off the ship and take a stroll, but now there are too few crew members, and the 4 men he brought with him have just arrived, so they may not be familiar with the lifestyle of the Qinghai people, so Carl decided to let Kawamatsu take them to familiarize themselves with it first. Okay, let's act. Enelu, please take good care of the boat for me, so that I won't find that it's short of weight when I come back. After saying that, he jumped off the boat and walked towards the street. There was a large flow of people on the street. The action of the navy just now attracted a large group of people. A group of people looked at the people coming down. They had never seen it before. Of course, this was mainly the problem of the 4 seas. The people, navy, and pirates of the 4 seas are generally good enough for these people to know the pirates in their own sea area. In addition, the East China Sea is safer than other sea areas, so it is called the weakest East China Sea by the other 3 seas. Local people in the East China Sea rarely report any pirate incidents, because even if they report it, it is useless, because these people don't care at all. Only pirates who have emerged in the East China Sea will attract people's attention. For example, a few years ago, the pirate king Roger actually came from the East China Sea, and his hometown was still Rogue Town in the East China Sea. After being arrested, the pirate king Roger was escorted to Rogue Town, his hometown in the East China Sea, for execution. Rogue Town, which was originally just an ordinary town, has ushered in vigorous development, and many people came here because of the pirate king. But most of them want to sabotage Rogue Town. Because some people think that since Rogue Town is the hometown of the pirate king Roger, is it possible that the world's ultimate treasure One Piece might be related to Rogue Town? So there are often some harassments in Rogue Town, but after all, this is the birthplace and execution place of the man who claims to be the pirate king. The navy still has to maintain its face, so a large number of soldiers are stockpiled here. Carl walked and saw a bar on the road leading to the square. The name of the bar was written in gold. Roger walked into the store and saw an old man with gray hair sitting at the bar. What would you like to drink, bro? A bottle of rum, please. Boss, why did you name this shop? Oh, you mean Roger, we grew up together, then he went to sea, but I stayed here, he asked me to go to sea with him, but I couldn't go with him. Originally the shop owner didn't want to answer, but when he saw Carl wearing two weapons on his waist, one was the 7-star sword, and the other was the beloved knife ace that Roger gave to Carl before his death. After seeing the knife, the shop owner instantly felt like meeting an old friend he hadn't seen for many years. Hey, young man, can you let me see the knife on your waist? Carl handed Ace to the bar owner, who stroked the blade with trembling hands. He held the handle and pulled it out, and a red lightning was released from the scabbard. You are here again. I remember we didn't even have a good word when we met for the last time. Carl just kept watching. After a long time, the bar owner sheathed the knife and returned Ace to Carl. Carl paid for the wine and left. He took the bottle of wine he had just bought and walked to the square in the center of the town. There was a wooden platform on the square. This was where Roger was executed. Carl opened the cork of the rum bottle, took out Ace with the knife and sheath, and inserted it directly into the blue brick floor of the square. Rum was poured on Ace's knife. The wine flowed along the blade into the stone bricks, and the whole bottle of wine was poured out in a moment. Carl picked up Ace again and put it on his waist. He turned around and went back to the port where the ship had just docked. Captain, are you back so soon? Carl was only gone for a while, and Kanalulu thought that Carl would be gone for a long time. Now that he saw Carl coming back, he was immediately confused. Okay, now that I'm back, let's start training you today. You've been watching me and Mahak compete the past few days. Do you have any ideas for training? Actually, Enel's talent is not bad, especially since he came down from Sky Island. The results of his daily training are several times better than those on Sky Island. But this guy's fruit ability is too strong, and the fruit ability alone can beat most people. Because of this, Enel's armed color domineering has been delayed. You have to know that decades later, the Straw Hat Pirates only took 2 years to cultivate domineering, and they were not elementary domineering, and their strength was at the upper middle level. As the first crew member designated by Carl, how could Enel not have talent? Besides, we have Carl. Besides, if you want to specialize in developing fruits, there is a Thunder God Island in the New World. If you want to practice, you can take this guy there. And if this guy plays with sticks, you can go to the Flower Kingdom in the West Sea to ask for advice. It goes without saying that the country represented by the Flower Kingdom in the world of One Piece is well known, and the various moves there may help this guy. Now I'll give you a goal. Cultivate the armament hockey within half a year. If you can't cultivate it, you will have to reduce the number of apples by 2 boxes per month. Ah, no, Captain, can you be gentler? 1 box is okay. What? If you bargain, it will be 4 boxes. The guy shut up when he said he wanted to reduce the quantity of apples by 4 boxes. Today I will teach you taijutsu while training your observation hockey. Then they found 2 pieces of cloth, one for each of them, blindfolded their eyes and began to practice against each other. This is Carl's unique training method. If you want to practice like this, you must first learn taijutsu, and you can start as long as you have mastered taijutsu. The main reason for blindfolding is to focus on observation hockey, and the 2 people practicing against each other with their eyes blindfolded is to hone their taijutsu while practicing observation hockey, thereby enhancing their personal reaction ability and single-player combat ability. Carl originally came up with this method to practice hockey when he was alone, but because he was always alone, he never mentioned it again. Later, when he left in the country of fish and took Hiyori and Kawamatsu away. During the past few years of getting along, Carl has been trying to confirm his ideas on Kawamatsu. But this guy is not too weak, he has a problem with his mentality. Although he has the powerful blood of fishmen, he always feels like he has reached the end of his training, and he is neither up nor down. So when Carl found out that he might have reached his bottleneck, he stopped practicing with him. In his situation, Carl has no way to help him break through, he can only rely on himself. How can Carl not be excited when he meets Enel, who was brought down from Sky Island? Especially after getting along for almost a month, he found that Enel's talent is absolutely amazing. Not weak. It can even be said that he is at an upper middle level. It is easy for him to become a general or a vice admiral, and he can also strive for the strength of an emperor. It's just that he is a little older, so his training is much slower than Karl's. You should know that Karl's body is only 16 years old, but Karl started to hone his body when he was a child. He not only has special blood, devil fruit, 3 colors of domineering, swordsmanship, and physical skills, but he has been practicing since he was a child. Enel is 23 or 24 years old now. He likes to eat apples because he didn't eat anything good when he was a child. He was bullied since he was a child. If he hadn't got the thunder fruit, he might have been beaten to death on Sky Island or. The main reason for teaching him to practice physical skills now is to see if he can perfect the pseudo-life return that Karl developed before. As long as it is developed, he will have a way to pass it to Enel. However, Enel's thunder fruit is mostly based on close combat. If he doesn't know physical skills, he will be beaten into a muggle by others in a fight. 2 hours later, the people who went out to purchase came back. Karl continued to sail in the East China Sea with a few people. As for Mahawk, don't worry about him. Let alone inviting this guy on board. As long as the 7 warlords of the sea are not cancelled, this guy will never get on Karl's ship, so Karl is too lazy to talk about such a waste of words. Let's go. The next stop is the Konomi Islands. I just checked the map with Hiyori and found that the East China Sea is surrounded by densely packed small islands, with only a few larger islands. 3 days passed in a flash, and Karl's ship stopped at the port of this unknown island. There was a small town here with a small population. 3 days ago, the Crown Pirates were quite eye-catching in the news. Shock. The first man who rejected the world government formed a pirate group named the Crown Pirates. On their first voyage to the East China Sea, they were intercepted by the head of the 7 warlords of the sea, codenamed Hawkeye. After that, the captain of the Crown Pirates, Master Karl, fought with him and Mahawk was knocked unconscious. The Crown Pirates appeared in Roger Town, East China Sea, and they were suspected of taking Roger's sword to pay tribute to the place where he was executed. Then there were a lot of illustrations. The first piece of news was not very interesting, but the second one was very tempting. Just the words about the sword of the pirate king Roger when he was alive made it hard to imagine how many people would fight for it. At the same time, the navy that learned that Karl appeared in Roger Town also received news from the East China Sea garrison. Let's talk about this matter now. How do you think we should deal with it? Should we offer a bounty? At this time, more than a dozen people were sitting at a long table at the Maryford Navy headquarters to discuss. At this time, the admirals of the Navy were quite rare. At this time, the Navy Marshal was still Steelbone Sora, and the admirals were Sengoku and Zephyr on the surface. In fact, the real situation was that there was only one. Zephyr captured a group of pirates 16 years ago, and several of his subordinates who escaped felt that they had lost face, so they found Zephyr's family and killed them. Since then, Zephyr has been in a long period of depression. He once wanted to escape from the Navy and resign from the position of admiral, but later he reluctantly agreed to stay as an instructor after being persuaded by everyone to provide fresh blood for the Navy. As for Garp, although he has the strength of an admiral, he is unwilling to be promoted, because to be promoted to an admiral, he must swear allegiance to the celestial dragons. It doesn't matter if he is just an admiral, and since Roger came to surrender to him, his life has been much more relaxed. He brought Roger's widow to live in Windmill Town, and he also had a grandson who was not related by blood. In addition, 3 years ago, his stupid son Dragon brought a child back and said that it was Garp's grandson and then left. Now the old man spends most of his time in the East China Sea, and returns to the Navy headquarters from time to time. So he doesn't want to care about most things. It's okay that there are 2 fools at home, but his son is still out there doing some revolution. He feels like his head is going to explode if he cares about these things. At this time, Garp was eating snacks and dozing off. Is it necessary for us to increase the bounty since Karl hasn't caused any trouble yet? Sengoku asked from the side. Sora looked at Sengoku and then at Zephyr. After all, he was not strong enough, and he was about to be transferred. The 5 elders planned to assign him the position of Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Sengoku has begun to clean up his mess step by step. He has been the Admiral of the Navy for more than 20 years since the Rocks Pirates gradually rose. It was really a failure. All the credit was taken by Garp. Not to mention that this guy was unwilling to be promoted to admiral, but he supported Sengoku. So now after the transfer, his former confidants will definitely be removed. Garp, tell me how to deal with this. After all, they are heading to the East China Sea, which is under your jurisdiction. Huh? What did you say just now? Garp was dozing off when he was startled by the sudden shout. He was confused when he saw the people headed by Steel Bone Sora looking at him. Sengoku on the side pulled Garp's sleeve and whispered something about Carl in Garp's ear. What? Carl ran to my territory. Kuzan, come back with me now. Garp was too lazy to waste words with Kong. This guy talked about justice on the surface, but in fact he was just for the justice of the celestial dragons. The lives of other civilians had nothing to do with him. As long as the world government or the celestial dragons issued any orders, he would immediately run to accept the mission. And because Garp didn't like the celestial dragons, supporting Sengoku was also intentionally or unintentionally making things difficult for Garp. If it was a fight, it would be fine. Garp had never been afraid of a fight, but if it was this kind of trick, he would not bother to argue with him. After Garp finished speaking, he took Aokiji away. Kong on the side suppressed his anger, the blue veins on his forehead bulged, and he was on the verge of getting angry. On the other side, Garp took Aokiji directly onto his warship with a dog head and headed towards Upside Down Mountain. Okay, let's get back to business. Should we add a bounty to this Carl? I think it should be added. I object. He has not done anything evil. If the bounty is increased just because he is competing with the Shichibukai, it may cause panic. Me too. I don't agree with your point of view. What era is it now? Have you forgotten that a few years ago, the world was in chaos and pirates were rampant because of what Roger said? What's wrong with increasing the bounty for a pirate now? He does have the ability. Don't wait until he grows up before you start to pay attention to him. This person can defeat the person who was first invited by the world government to form the 7 warlords of the sea. It shows that his strength is definitely not weak. In addition, the world government invited him before, so his talent must be strong. Quote. That's enough. Let's ask the world government what to do. After all, the one who was defeated is one of the 7 warlords of the sea. At this time, Sora's characteristics as a lackey of the celestial dragons were revealed. Bala 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 bala. 5 Sama, the Navy just sent over a document about how to deal with the matter of Mr. Carl defeating Jorakal Mahak, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Increase the reward or. We already know about this, so let's increase the reward by 200 million. Yes, 5 Elder Stars Sama, and hung up the Den Den Mushi. The 5 elders said they would increase the bounty, and as for other matters, we don't have to worry about them. They probably want to recruit him to join the 7 warlords of the sea. The last time the world government sent CP0 to recruit Carl, but Carl refused and had a fight with him. In the end, CP0 was defeated. Now it took Carl almost a year to defeat Mahak Hakai, the leader of the 7 warlords of the sea. You have to know that Mahak was carefully selected and recruited at a great cost. Now Carl can defeat anyone he wants. With this growth rate, maybe in some time he will go to war with those who occupy the new world. At that time, he can move into the new world without any effort, and then eliminate these lowly pirates, so that they, the celestial dragons, can rest easy again. Go and post a bounty, 435 million Baileys. Then the bounty order and the news about Roger's saber were sent out together. This directly aroused the covetousness of some pirates who were overconfident. A very evil person. Mr. Carl. Reward. 435 million berries. Life or death. For 3 days, the Black King was either fighting or fighting. After fighting the pirates and the navy, it was really boring. After getting off the ship, the crown pirates wandered around the town. Because the port of the town was not connected to the entrance of the town, Carl and his men did not cause any harassment when they came, and they were not stupid enough to stop in front of people. This time, they came down mainly to take a walk and look for Buggy or Shanks. Maybe if they were lucky, they would meet that guy Crow. No matter what means he used, Carl was determined to pull this guy on board. This is the man in the One Piece world whose IQ is not inferior to that of Shanks's deputy Beckman. Carl asked while walking. Because there were chain islands nearby, there were some underground black markets selling information. So Carl went to those business houses to inquire. After all, these news could not be known by someone who was randomly pulled from the street. Only the people in those business houses could access these things. Thanks for watching.